Hi everyone, welcome back to another video at Talent500 channel. I am Kushal Vijay and I'm a software engineer and a YouTuber by profession. Today we'll be discussing about the most important question that you will require to clear your full stack development engineer roles, for experienced roles at amazing companies. We'll be discussing about the most important questions for MongoDB topic and for ExpressJS topic. These are very crucial if you are looking for a role in full stack development domain. And if you haven't checked out our previous videos, we are running a complete series where we covered a lot of the things which can help you to get or to land an amazing opportunity as a full stack developer in an amazing company. So make sure you check those out also after this video, and if you have any doubts, make sure to comment it down and like this video and subscribe to the Talent500 channel for more amazing updates. So let's get started without any further ado. So let's get started with our interview series questions on MongoDB and ExpressJS. First of all, the agenda for today is we'll be going through the advanced questions of MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database. Then we'll be going through ExpressJS, which is also a JavaScript framework, and then we'll go to what you can expect in the next video. So we are doing a full stack series which can help you to clear interviews for senior positions for full stack development roles. So if you have missed the previous videos, I will highly recommend to check out the previous videos as well. Let's move on to our first question from MongoDB. So while creating a schema in MongoDB, what are the points to take into consideration? That's a very important question where the interviewer is asking the points that needs to be considered, which are the necessary and mandatory points which needs to be taken care while creating a schema in MongoDB. So while creating a schema in MongoDB, the point that need to be taken care are, first of all, you need to design the schema according to the user's requirement. Whatever the user requirements are, you have to design the schema accordingly. For example, if you are designing a e-commerce website, the requirements for the user are cart or the account database or the product database. Accordingly, you have to design the schema, whatever things are required by the user. Then second is combining objects into one document if you want to use them together, otherwise separate them. The document here can be considered as one entity of MongoDB database. You should combine objects into one document if you want to use them together, else it's better to separate out things if they are not used together. Third is do joins while on write and not when on read. So while reading, you should not do joins. When you write into the database, you should do joins. And for more frequent user cases, optimize the schema. This is the fifth point that needs to be taken care while creating a schema. Then the final is do complex aggregation in the schema. So these are the 5 points that need to be taken care while creating a schema in MongoDB. Let's move on to our next question. What are the limitations of 32-bit versions of MongoDB? We have 64-bit, we have 32-bit. Now the interviewer is asking what the limitations of 32-bit. So MongoDB uses memory mapped files. So while running on a 32 build of MongoDB, the total storage size for a server, which includes the data as well as the indexes, is 2 GB. For this reason, we do not deploy MongoDB to production on 32-bit machines. Whereas when we are running on a 64-bit build of MongoDB, there is virtually no limit to storage size. Hence, for production deployments, 64 builds and operating systems strongly recommended. So just because the limitation is the storage, which includes data and the indexes, storage size on the server is limited for 32-bit versions of MongoDB. Therefore, for production environments, 64-bit build of MongoDB is highly recommended. So this is the second question. Let's move on to our next question. So what kind of database is MongoDB? Now you need to help the interviewer understand what is MongoDB, how all the things associated with it, how the data is stored, how the transactions are being done. So you can explain the interviewer this question in this way. MongoDB is a document-oriented database management system. The interviewer understand or explain it in the form of an example. For example, you can think of it as MySQL, but with JSON-like object comprising of the data model rather than a RDBMS or a relational database management system table. So in NoSQL databases, which is that is MongoDB, we store our entities or objects in JSON form instead of RDBMS tables. Significantly, MongoDB support neither joins nor transactions. However, it features secondary indexes, an expressive query language, atomic writes on a per document level, and fully consistent reads. So in MongoDB, it does not support joins nor transactions, but it has features like secondary indexes. Since we are storing the data in JSON form, it is very easy to fetch data via the key value pair, and atomic writes on a per document level happens. It's an expressive query language. The way you write the queries is very easy to read, and basically expressing query language is something you are writing what you are actually expecting from it. Then operationally, MongoDB offers master-slave replication with automated failover, and it's built in horizontal via automated range-based partitioning. Let's move on to our next question. So what is the difference between MongoDB and MySQL? So we just now looked at MongoDB as an example of MySQL only, but the major difference we found out was the way data is being stored. But let's see what else we can show. You can also consume the SQL and NoSQL databases differences here, but let's see how we can explain it to the interviewer. So although both the databases are free and open source in nature, they are freely available, there are a lot of differences in terms of how the data is being represented or structured, the relationships, how the transactions happen, querying the data, schema designs, definition, performance speed, normalization, and many more things. And as I mentioned, all the differences which are there in a RDBMS, NoSQL database, and a SQL database can be used as an answer to this question. Moving to the next question, what is the use of MongoDB? So we all know it's a database, but you need to explain it to the interviewer in a more elaborative way. For example, MongoDB is a relational database management system replacement for web applications, so when we have something close to RDBMS, MongoDB could be a good use. So obviously for web application we have to have a database in order to store users' data, and MongoDB is very popular and can be a good use. Now you need to explain the salient features of it also along with the usage of MongoDB. So what is the use of MongoDB? Now every web application that you go surf on the internet has a database associated with it. So earlier RDBMS, relational database management system, was being consumed, and MongoDB is a replacement to that for all the web applications present out there because of its amazing advantages. Like, it has its own cons as well, but considering the current architecture in the system, MongoDB is of a good use. Along with this, you have to explain other salient features of MongoDB to the interviewer. It also gives addition partition tolerance, which RDBMS systems doesn't offer, but it has problems with availability. Nonetheless, if we want more scalability, MongoDB could be the right choice. It is suitable for real-time analysis, high-speed logging, and it's highly scalable as well. Craigslist uses MongoDB for archive post. Craigslist is a very highly surfable website which consumes MongoDB for its archived post. Just like Instagram has archive post, they are being stored in MongoDB database. Let's move on to our next question. Now we have come to the advanced questions of ExpressJS. So the first question for ExpressJS is, when does a cross-origin resource get failed in ExpressJS? A cross-origin can fail in the following scenarios. So basically you have to explain the interviewer all those scenarios in which the cross-origin resource can be failed. Now the first scenario is, the cross-origin can fail if it's to a different domain, or in case of a different port, or in case of a different subdomain, or in case of a different protocol. So these are the four scenarios in which the core origin can get failed. Basically the different domain, different port, different subdomain, and different protocol. So along with this, you can also share what is a cross origin resource So cross-origin resource sharing is basically a mechanism that allows restricted resources on a web page to be requested from another domain outside the domain from which the first resource was served. So basically it allows the restricted resources on a web page to be requested from another domain outside the domain in which the former resource is being served. Now this particular thing, the cross origin resource sharing, can get failed in the four following scenarios which we just discussed: to a different domain, to a different port, to a different subdomain, or to a different protocol. Let's move on to our next question. Now, what are the steps to follow to set up HTTP for Express with the help of Let's Encrypt and Certbot? So first of all, let's understand why this Let's Encrypt or why this Certbot is required. So basically every website needs to follow a protocol, that is HTTP, HTTPS, and why they are required? Because they are the protocols for security. If you're surfing on the internet and you're not surfing a website which supports HTTP, HTTPS, your internet provider will not allow you to access that website because of the security concern. There are so many hackers and crackers around the globe which can breach into your system, can get access to your system just because of the data transactions that are being happening on the internet. But when there is HTTP, HTTPS security or protocol being activated, there is security in all the transactions that happens, because everything is encrypted after that. So the steps that you need to follow in order to set up the HTTP is, first of all, installing the Certbot, which is basically a dependency which you'll use to install certificates on your server. Secondly, generating the SSL certificate by Certbot. So the Certbot generates the certificate SSL certificate for your server, for your website. Then you have to allow your Express to serve the static files. Static files include images, media, then confirming the domain, then obtaining the certificate, and then setting up for the renewal. So what happens is all these certificates get expired after some time. Sometimes it is 30 days, sometimes it is 90 days. So they need to be renewed after this particular period of time. So what generally people do is, so you can add the points related to each of these steps to the interviewer. So what happens is, when either you can do it manually for the renewal part, or you can set up a cron job for the same. You can run a cron job after every 28 or 30, like whichever, what is the time period of that expiry. You can run a cron job from your server, and then it will automatically renew the certificate for that particular server. Now renewing process is simple. You just have to run a command on your server and it will renew it automatically. Now let's move on to our next question. So what are some distinct features of ExpressJS? Now here you need to explain all the distinct features of ExpressJS in detail. You can use the help of examples as well. So the first and most amazing feature of ExpressJS are distinct. Specifically, we can design single page, multi-page, hybrid web apps as well as APIs with ExpressJS. So not just single page websites or APIs, but it also allows us to build multi-pages or hybrid web apps using the ExpressJS. It has a routing table is defined for performing HTTP operations. Middleware can be set up for responding to RESTful and HTTP request. Now what is middleware? First of all, middleware is nothing but a software that acts as a bridge between an operating system or a database and applications, especially on a network. Then comes the MVC architecture, which is the model view controller like architecture structure, which enables the web apps into MVC architecture. So it has MVC like structure which enables it to organize web apps into MVC architecture, which is the model view controller architecture, where model holds the database or the schemas, view holds the processing logic, and controller helps you to render things and how the things will happen. Then comes HTML pages, which can dynamically rendered on the basis of passing arguments to templates. So we have HTML templates in the front end. Whatever data we pass from the views by getting the data from the model, we can render that dynamically to the front end, the HTML pages, and there it can be rendered in whichever way we want. Basically passing that data in the form of arguments to the HTML templates and then rendering it with the proper syntax is something which is a distinct feature of ExpressJS. NoSQL as well as RDBMS systems databases are supported by it. So relational database management system as well as NoSQL databases are supported by ExpressJS. High performance is delivered due to its fast I/O, super fast I/O. The performance is adequate because of the thin layer prepared by it. The performance is really high, and that is because of its super fast input output. The performance is adequate because of its thin layer prepared by it. So when we talk about web application, routing is one of the most done thing. Like whatever requests are coming, they need to be routed to the right place, then responses to be routed to the right user. So routing is a thing which happens very frequently, and it's easy by its robust API. So ExpressJS has its robust API which makes routing very easy. Further, another advantage or another distinct feature of ExpressJS is it's a single threaded as well as it's asynchronous. So these are the distinct features of ExpressJS. Now let's move on to our next question. So what is the difference between Node.js and ExpressJS? So we have already discussed about Node.js in one of our previous videos, the advanced question which can be asked. So I will highly recommend please go through that video as well to understand what are the questions related to Node.js, and it will help you to understand the difference properly as well. So Node.js is also an open source platform on which JavaScript code is executed outside of a browser. It is used by companies like Uber, Walmart, Netflix and many other etc. It is a platform acting as a web server and not a programming language or framework. On the other hand, ExpressJS is a framework built on Node.js. So if you look it closely and understand the slight difference, Node.js is a platform acting as a web server and not a programming language or a framework. On the other hand, ExpressJS is a framework built on Node.js. Let's move on to our last question for today, which is what is meant by scaffolding in ExpressJS and what are the ways to achieve this? So scaffolding is a process of creating structure of the application. We can manually create a public directory, add middleware, create separate route files, etc. So in ExpressJS, you have the flexibility to create the structure of an application, including by manually including the public directory, middleware, and route files. And this process is known as scaffolding. A scaffolding tool sets up all the things for us so that we can directly get started with building the application. So ExpressJS provides us multiple types of tools which can help us set up all the things, and we can quickly start building our application. So there are two ways of achieving it. First is Express Application Generator, which allows you to create a project that is configured to use most common CSS style sheet engines, whereas with the other one is Human, which is very common. It runs as a command-like interface written for Node.js and combines several functions into one place. So Human is very common and it's a CLI written for Node.js and it combines several functions into one place. So this is it. We discussed a lot of questions around MongoDB and ExpressJS which are being asked in full stack development roles for senior engineers. In the upcoming videos, we'll be discussing about Python and Django interview questions. We'll be covering the most important question that are being asked for full stack development role. So Django is, if I brief about, it's also a backend framework. Python is something which is used to write the Django framework, and this also follow the model view template architecture. We'll be discussing the most important questions which can help you clear the interviews if you are looking for a role in full stack development where Django is the most important skill required. And I will highly recommend everyone to please go through the previous videos as well, where we covered about Node.js, NoSQL databases, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, and various other things around which can help you crack full stack development roles. You can connect with Talent500 social media handles, and if you have any questions, make sure you comment it down. Thank you, and let me know your doubts, let me know your comments. If you want any specific topic around full stack development, that also you can write down in the comments. You can check out for further resources in the description. Thank you.